Hi, I'm Dan, and today I'm pleased to announce the June release for BookStack in 2023. So there's a few upgrade notices for this release. If you are using any custom assigned roles to the guest user account, or if you've customized any of the fonts in the system, or if you've configured email settings where the mail encryption option is set to SSL, then please review our update notices because you might need to make some changes or check some things. So the first feature I want to talk about is in regards to comments. So we've long supported comments in BookStack, and we've always had the ability to reply to other comments. So you could choose to reply to a certain comment and it will show up within that you've replied to a comment above. But these comments would always be shown in chronological order in just one big list. So if you had a conversation thread between multiple users, it could be really hard to track. So in this release, as I'm showing here, these comment threads are now displayed in kind of a nesting layout order. So we can see here we've got a conversation chain between 3 users, and now at least up to 4 layers of depth, you'll visually see replies being nested in at one level, which just makes things so much easier to track. And once it gets down to that kind of max limit of 4, which I've put in place just to keep things reasonable, it's at that point in which you'll then see these kind of indication markers just to confirm what comment that comment is in reply to. And then while making these changes to comments, a whole bunch of other little things have been tweaked and updated, so the design of these have been improved just to be a little bit more compact and cleaner, and it collapses down for mobile a bit better, and it's been tested when using a keyboard and a screen reader. And then to support these changes, the interaction has been updated a little bit. So if I was to, for example, reply to this comment, I'll then see the new comment box put in the place where it should show within this new nested hierarchy. So overall, should make the comments a bit nicer to use, and especially these longer conversations a bit easier to track. Now, continuing on the subject of comments, within a platform like BookStack, comments could often be used to provide feedback on the documentation content itself. So they might provide potential improvements to a page or things to action when you're editing a page. But to see those while in the editor, you'd have to open a new tab or something similar. But now within the editor, in the sidebar, if comments are enabled, you'll now see this new comments option. So we click on that. We then are able to easily see the comments within the editor. And we get all that new nesting layout goodness that we just saw. And it's much the same as when you're viewing a page, but the main difference is that you can't edit or create comments here. It's kind of like a read-only list. That could be something we change in the future depending on if there's a need, but hopefully should remain a useful addition for those that utilize comments quite a lot in BookStack. Next up, I want to go over some work done to the image manager within BookStack. So we previously made some updates to the image manager, but 23.06 goes a level deeper and makes quite a few revisions to the design. So first of all, this top bar here where we had the type filters and then the search bar, this has now been streamlined to a single bar. It will overlay the images when you start scrolling down, just be a bit more compact, give more room to the images and to present a bit nicer. The image grid itself has a little bit of spacing just to separate images a bit. And the text that you'll see when I hover over images, that used to always be there, but it could make the whole area look quite busy. So that doesn't show until an image is hovered or focused upon, and the text in there has been simplified just to be a bit cleaner. And now if I go ahead and select an image, within the sidebar, we now see a bit more information about that image also. So we get the uploaded time, the updated date if it was updated, who it was uploaded by, and where it was uploaded to, which can be quite important for permissions. It also allows me so I can see, hey, is this image actually in use? It was uploaded to this page. I can click through on that in a new tab, and then see, oh yeah, there it is, it's in use. And now in regards to the overall structure of the image manager, a lot of things have been revamped to make it now usable on mobile. So previously it was really only a desktop only experience. On mobile, everything squashed up and was really unusable. But now things clapped in a much more sensible, expected way. And it goes into this kind of like tabbed interface. So I can go to image details, or if I select one, and then view image details, you can now do everything that you could do on desktop. And now one extra thing that's been added in is that in this menu here, we have delete like we used to have, but now there's also this replace image option, which allows you to replace the underlying image file for that image upload. So this is particularly useful if you, for example, share an image across like 50 different pages. Instead of having to upload a new image and go in and replace that on 50 pages, we can now just update the image file once and that'll be updated across everywhere. And it's not just mobile use that the image manager has been made more accessible to. I've also done some extra testing to bring this up to our standards in terms of accessibility usage. And on the subject of making things accessible, within BookStack, we have this little page content pop-up, like this one, that appears when you select a range of text. And this has some useful things like a little permalink that goes to that particular section, or you can show the include syntax, or you can click the button to edit from that block of content. But attempting to access and use this has been particularly particularly tricky to people just using a screen reader and keyboard, just because the action of selecting a range of text can be quite troublesome in those scenarios, and the way that I built the pop-up was quite weak to accessibility in many regards. So in this release, we paid some attention to this type of use case. So now, at the end of the page, it's not visible to most users that aren't using a screen reader or keyboard, but there is a new added button. At the end of the page content, there is enter section select mode. So I'm going to tab through and then select that, even though it's not visible right now. And that puts me into the selection mode. I just confirm this would be something that will be read out by a screen reader, so they'd be able to find that button, hopefully. But now I'm in this section select mode. This has made each of the main content blocks within the page content focusable, so now I can tab between the main content sections. And when I entered that mode, it automatically took me up to the page title and focused me on that section. So if I hit tab, I can focus through these sections. And for example, I'm on the call out now. If I press enter on this, it now shows me that pop-up and then puts my focus on that pop-up. So now I can go through these actions. And the pop-up itself has been made much more accessible. It has the correct labeling. And I've been through to make sure everything is sensible and achievable when just using a screen reader and a keyboard. Yeah, so just another example of making sure that all of the features of BookStack, including these little lesser known power user features, are accessible to all types of users. Next up, a note on our system CLI. So we added the system CLI as part of the last feature release. And this was a new command line interface that allows you to do a lot of admin commands like update an instance or back up and restore an instance quite easily. So over this release cycle, we've made a good bunch of updates to this to improve it in various scenarios, mainly around where folders might be symlinked, which is quite common in like Docker-based environments. But overall output should be nicer and functionality should be more reliable. But one of the main things that might help you use this tool is that we now have this documentation page on our documentation site. And this goes through all the different use cases of using it. It goes through each of the commands and all of the options for each of those commands. So you have now full documentation on all the different ways that you can use this new tool. And now on to a change in customization, and in particular how fonts might be customized within BookStack. So we've long had some guidance about how you might change out fonts, and it's always been like a block of styles that you might add to the custom HTML head content customization setting with some CSS. And that's still the case, but we've changed the specifics in what that CSS looks like. So now it'll look like this, where it's using CSS variables. And this was primarily done just to simplify how these custom fonts are defined, and also to make their usage a bit more flexible so there's less potential openness to breaking in the future when we're making changes to the BookStack codebase itself. But as a little additional benefit that we've sneaked in with these changes, you now have the ability to set a font specific to the headings within BookStack. And now some developer-focused changes. So on our REST API, specifically within the API endpoint to fetch a page, there's a new property, which we can see down here, called raw_HTML. And this provides you the raw HTML for a page from the BookStack database. So previously we provided this HTML property, but this HTML property is after BookStack has done its pre-display parsing. And this includes a number of things, including attempting to sanitize out any scripting content that could be deemed harmful. And it also parses things like page includes, which is what this example is showing here. So within the raw HTML, we can see there's an include, and it's including a section from page 80. And within the HTML post BookStack's processing, we see the content brought in from that section. And now in regards to the BookStack API documentation, the way that the documentation has been generated and rendered has improved a little bit. So now endpoints might have multi-paragraph descriptions. For example, we can see in this one, there's 3 different paragraphs here to explain the different parts of the endpoint. Whereas before this was kind of forced to be in one big block that might be hard to read. Now it's a bit more pleasant. And while we're in the API docs, I'll show you another endpoint that's had an update. So specifically, it's the image gallery update endpoint. Now this was an existing endpoint that we had supported in BookStack, but really it only supported updating the name of an image. But now you can pass an image file under the image property, and that will replace the underlying file for an existing image entry. So this aligns with that new replace image option we've added to the BookStack image manager within the user interface. And of course, it wouldn't be a BookStack release without the great efforts from all of our translators in the community. So a massive thank you to everyone in this list that has helped provide translations since our last feature release. So that covers all the features that I want to talk about that have been built into this release. But something else that we've done over this release cycle is that there's been a few updates to the BookStack hacks page. So we've got 3 new hacks in here, all quite specific to the WYSIWYG editor, but one of these might prove particularly useful because I've had some requests for this in the past, which is WYSIWYG docx import, so importing Word documents. So just to remind you, this is a hack and not an official part of BookStack, and there are quite a few considerations that are listed out here to think about, but it's listed here because it probably will be useful for a bunch of other people. If I just go through a quick example of using this, so if we scroll down to the code and expand this, this is head HTML code. We could click on that to find out more information, but I'll show you the process here. So all we need to do is copy all of this. I'm going to go over to BookStack, go to the settings, customization, scroll to the bottom, custom HTML head content. We'll paste that in this box. There we go. Now, if I go back, find a page, then I'll edit this page. What I can do, I can then find a file, and in particular, this hack supports docx files, so modern Word documents. And now I can drag this into the editor, and then it will try its best attempt at getting that content and putting it in a much more simplified view, probably, into the editor as BookStack page content. And we do get some pop-up warnings, but again, these are noted within the considerations of the hack. So thinking about the next release cycle, we're going to be hitting the 8-year mark for BookStack next month. So I'll probably put together a blog post to track the project metrics to see how we're doing over time. In terms of the core project, I think I really need to just sit down and then work out a path forward for notifications and similar things like that, because there's a lot of different popular requests around notifications. So I'd really like to plan something out that I can take to the community, because I've been meaning to do it for a while. But that'll probably take longer than a single release cycle, so I'll probably be focused on bug fixing and performance, and maybe focus on a single smaller feature. But that covers everything I've got to share in this video. Hopefully your upgrade goes smoothly, and I hope you enjoy all the new features added in this release. Otherwise, have a wonderful day.